So just let us sink in. Cleopatra lived closer in time to us than the building of the Great Pyramids. Hello, welcome to the channel. My name's Matt and this is Basking in the Story. Today we're going to do a quick wrap up of what I read in September. So there's 6 books to get through, and I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on all the books because some of them have got full video reviews, but as we discuss them I will link to the relevant reviews so you can check them out if you're interested. So let's crack on. A couple of them were on the book along list. Neither of them made it to the shortlist, but they were In Ascension by Martin Mcneese. So this is it's classified as sci-fi, I suppose, science fiction, and it follows a character called Lee who comes from a sort of violent, turbulent upbringing and throws herself into marine biology and studying marine biology, and that leads her to a trench that's opened up in the earth that's deeper than the Mariana Trench, the deepest trench we've ever found. She wants to do research, which then leads her on to finding sort of an algae that can then be used for food production. That then leads on to a space program, and effectively what we've got, and I talk about this a lot in my review, and there's some very skilled writing within this about humanity and what it means to be human, and the fact that we're not just on this planet but of this planet, and that we are habitats ourselves, and sort of the cycle of life, etc, etc. There's a lot of ideas within this, as there is with much science fiction. The bit I struggled most with this, in very simple terms, was that I didn't connect with Lee as the main character, and as this was a book that seemed to be focusing on humanity and what humanity was, not being able to connect with the main human in the story sort of let the book down for me. So it didn't work great for me, but it is, if you do connect with Lee, I think this book will absolutely sing to you and you will absolutely adore it. Unfortunately, that just wasn't the case for myself. So as I said, there is a video review of that up, so you can go and check that out if you're interested. The other Booker Prize longlisted book I read was Pearl by Sian Hughes. So I actually listened to this. The audio book had an art copy from NetGalley. This was superb, and I was disappointed to see this not reach the shortlist, to be honest, because this is a moving story of grief, loss, and memory. And it follows Marianne, who at the age of 8, her world gets turned upside down because her mother disappears, and it's her life then over the next few decades dealing with that loss and coming to terms with the loss and the grief and the impact it has on her, and also a discussion of memory and childhood memory and what do we remember, and is what we remember actually what happened, or have we just created these memories from other stories or conglomerated other things that happened into one to give us a narrative. And it was beautiful, it was touching, I had tears in my eyes in several points. I absolutely adored it, and there is a review up for this as well if you want to check that out, where I go into a bit more detail. Again, non-spoiler, but about how this made me feel. It was a beautiful story. Unfortunately, didn't make the shortlist, but a magnificent story nonetheless, and short, it's only a couple hundred pages. Beautiful. So that was Pearl by Sian Hughes. Then we had a new release from a local author, so Zadie Smith, who lives in northwest London as well. She released The Fraud, which is her first historical fiction novel based in Victorian England. We follow Eliza Touche, who is a widowed housekeeper, and she's a housekeeper to a novelist who is also her cousin by marriage. We see London, in Victorian London, but we see also Jamaica, so we get the two contrasts of Victorian England and the slave trade and plantations in Jamaica. We get a view of the literary elite. She has quite a take on Charles Dickens, who appears a few times in the book, and we get an interesting view on him and his character. But this also mainly follows what was known as the Tichborne trial, which was quite the case in Victorian England during the time, and it was this huge fraud trial where a Cockney-born butcher from Australia was basically claiming to be the heir to the Tichborne fortune and the baronetcy as well. I think it was baronetcy, but you know, the case seemed to clearly indicate that he was a fraud, and eventually he loses the case. But he had huge public support. He arranged huge rallies. I talk a lot about this in the review I've done. But if you are interested in getting an interesting view of Victorian England, but also the impact of slavery and the dichotomy of view of where the Victorian literary elite, but also Victorian public believed the slave trade to be, and the passing of the Anti-Slave Trade Act in the early 1800s in Britain was viewed as the end of slavery, when actually anybody who was enslaved was still enslaved. And there's lots of rebellions and uprisings within Jamaica fighting for freedom. And it's that dichotomy you get just there's a character called Andrew Bogle who you meet in the book, and who was a former slave in Jamaica, and we see his history and his story and his family story of how it happened and the brutality of it as well. It was a really good story, magnificently told. I thoroughly enjoyed it and would recommend. As I say, if you're interested, it's obviously Victober as well currently. So if you want to get another view of the Victorian era, but from a modern voice, then check out The Fraud. There is a video up, a full video on that, so you can check that out as well. What else did I do? The other one I did was a Greek retelling called Stone Blind by Natalie Haynes. So I knew of Natalie Haynes from her Stand Up for the Classics BBC series. I think there's 7-8 series now of that, where she discusses various classical topics or classical individuals, classical stories, and does a stand-up routine of them. And it's funny and very entertaining. So I did want to pick up one of her books, and Stone Blind was one I was managed to get from the library. I enjoyed this. It's a Medusa retelling, Medusa and Perseus retelling, really from the point of view of Medusa, and it really asks the questions of who are the monsters and what makes a monster. And I thought it was well told. I thought it was humorous. There was parts of it where I felt the gods were a bit too childlike in their petulance, but then Greek gods can be. But it's beautifully told, and it is a very interesting view of the female view of the Greek stories, and also comparisons to modern society, where we still get sort of the victim blaming that still occurs even today, unfortunately, within our society. So again, there's a full review of that. I think it'll be out on Monday, if I've got my timings right, and this comes out when it should do. It will be live on Monday, so you can watch that full review on Monday. So look forward to that. So that is the 4 books that I've done reviews for, or are coming. I've then got, so I know what you're thinking is, where's all the fantasy? There's normally some fantasy on that. So I have been reading fantasy. So I've got 2 books on the go, which I haven't finished yet, which I'm not reviewing, which is Ruin by John Gwynne, which is the 3rd book in the Faithful and the Fallen. So I'm only about halfway through that, so you'll have to wait for that review next month. And I'm also reading The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu, which is downstairs, so I'm not going to bring that up. I've almost finished it. I think I've got about 60-70 pages left, so not going to squeeze into this month, because I'm recording this now at the very 1st of October. So you have to pick this up, or I will pick this up in my review next month. But I am enjoying that as well. But so I've had some big fantasy books on the go. I just haven't quite finished them yet. One I did finish was my Discworld reread, and that was Pyramids by Terry Pratchett, which is basically a standalone. I mean, you could argue they're all standalones within the Discworld, but this one is very much standalone. The characters are unique to the story, pretty much. I think some of them may appear later on, but this is not part of a sub-series, shall we say. So we follow the main character, who is the heir to the throne of, it's not Egypt, but it kind of is Egypt. And he's been sent off to assassin school in Ankh-Morpork, where he learns, but then his father passed away and he has to come back to take on his kingship and being king of this ancient land. And it's really a story that covers, obviously it talks about religion and the dogma of religion, but also about traditionalism and progressivism, and how we can get stuck in traditionalist views and conservatism of those views, and actually, that progressiveness, the importance of progression within society. And I think it's interesting that he's chosen the Egyptian world, or effectively the Egyptian world, to tell this story, because especially the way we view the ancient Egyptian world is as one big single entity, which is a very probably incorrect view, but we do see that huge period of history as the same. Like we view sort of, the building of the pyramids and, Tutankhamun and Cleopatra and all of that sort of in one single entity of an empire as the ancient Egyptians. But actually that spans a huge amount, that spans thousands of years. There's a huge amount of time. And there's a running chord through it, absolutely. But it spans a huge amount of time. And what's fascinating, and one of the facts that I always have to think about, but works out, is the Cleopatra that the famous Cleopatra, because there were other Cleopatras, but the really famous Cleopatra that, if I say Cleopatra, the one you think of, her life, she lived closer in time to us today than the building of the Great Pyramids. So just let us think in. Cleopatra lived closer in time to us than the building of the Great Pyramids. Hopefully give you some semblance of how long that ancient Egyptian period that we view is. And it's interesting because obviously we see that as one single entity, i.e. the traditionalism of it, compared to the progressiveness of the next 2,000 years to where we are now. Anyway, by the by, I enjoyed it. I do enjoy Terry Pratchett. Is his best work? I don't think it's his best, or my favourite, should I say. But it is an interesting view. Then finally, because I was working through those big fantasy books, I wanted something a bit different. I've done all that literary fiction reading as well, historical fiction. I went for a thriller and continued on with Stieg Larsson's Millennium series. This is the second book in the series. So this is The Girl Who Played With Fire. I read The Girl with Dragon Tattoo earlier in the year. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I think I said when I did the discussion, the first half was really slow. Second half just ramped up and was brilliant. This one is a different story. So this is, in a sense, it's almost a character study. You learn a lot more about Elizabeth Salander in the story, her life, her beginnings, what has made her who she is, and why she is the way she is. And I mean, she's immense. She's a fabulous character who is, I suppose in our terminology these days, she'd be classed as morally grey, certainly. But she has incredibly principled individual, but also incredibly violent in protecting those principles when they have been crossed. But she's brilliant. So, but the other side we get the insight of a police investigation in Sweden and the media impact of that. And we still have Mikael Blomkvist from the first story, so we've still got those two main characters in this. We're also discussing the sex trade, so we've still got the, if you don't know, the original title of the first book, The Girl with Dragon Tattoo, is Men Who Hate Women, and we still get that thread flowing through because we're looking at the sex trade going into Sweden. And I thought I enjoyed it. It was, again, so many twists and turns, so many reveals. You learn so much about Elizabeth, and I thought it was brilliantly told. You know, there was plenty of shock moments within it, and I think Elizabeth is a fabulous character, and I want to read the final book in this series, which is The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest, I believe. So will I get that done this year? I hope so. But yeah, absolutely fabulous addition to the Millennium. Very different story, but fabulous addition to that story. So that is the 6 books I have read this month in September. I've enjoyed it. It's been a bit of a different month because, as you can see, I haven't finished any of the really big fantasy books, but I've certainly delved a bit more into literary fiction with the Booker Prize long list, Zadie Smith's new novel, and we've stepped a bit into the thriller, continue the thriller journey. So we are now in October. I am busy packing because my wife and my son and myself are off to Chicago in a couple of days. So when you see this, hopefully we are all in Chicago for the week. So that will be fun. And I will see you, or you will see me, in the next video. As I say, on Monday will be a Snowblind review. And I can't remember what I've got planned for the Friday after because I will be landing back. But I'll have a video lined up. So you won't miss any videos. But you will see what it is then. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video and you want to get more of this content, please do click subscribe. You can also click like. Put a comment down below. Say hello. Have you read any of these books? Are any of these books of interest to you? Any recommendations for me? I'm always listening to recommendations. I mean, my TBR is ever growing. My want to read list is an ever growing beast, like us all, I'm sure. But if you want to add to that, please do. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye. The original title of The Girl with Dragon Tattoo is Women Who Hate Men. No, that's not right. It was Men Who Hate Women. Let's get the right around.